Tonight,
now is the single best time and best opportunity to defeat Obamacare.
We are done.
Repealing the Affordable Care Act is wrong. It was wrong the first time. It is wrong the 31st time.
If the president's not going to implement the law, we're not going to fund it.
Welcome to Groundhog Day in the House of Representatives.
This law is not working. You don't have to take Republicans' word for it. You can take Democrats' word for it.
The House this week is going to vote for the 40th time to repeal the act. You aware of that?
Wasting the country's time by taking something like 40 meaningless votes to repeal Obamacare is not a jobs plan. That's not a jobs plan.
President Obama will scream and yell that the mean, nasty Republicans are threatening to shut down the government. And at that point, we have to stand up and win the fight.
We're sitting here wasting time and taxpayer dollars trying to find any possible reading of the law, a technicality, to take away health care from the people who need it most.
I don't think you can say you're against Obamacare if you vote for a budget that funds it. And I think it's outrageous that the president and his allies are threatening to shut down the American government if it doesn't fund Obamacare. Obamacare is not more important than the United States.
Senators Coburn and McCain now categorize the House's efforts to defund ACA as dishonest and hype.
For us to force this on the American people when they're having a hard time finding work is the wrong approach, absolutely the wrong approach.
Now is the time. Now when it really matters. This is the time to stop Obamacare from hurting more Americans across the country.
And welcome to Hannity. It is considered the cornerstone of the president's domestic policy agenda, and now the debate over Obamacare has returned to the forefront of American politics. Now, efforts to defund the controversial law are now raging on Capitol Hill. Doctors are threatening to close down their practices. Many business owners, they're facing an uncertain time and future thanks to the mountains of new and very costly regulations. And with all that in mind, tonight, for the hour, we have assembled a studio audience of doctors, healthcare executives, political commentators, business owners, and much more. Now, some support Obamacare, others are staunch opponents of the law, but over the next 60 minutes, we are all under one roof right here in our New York studios, and I'll welcome you all. Welcome aboard. Thank you for being here. All right, now, Dr. Siegel. The president made some promises about Obamacare. You can keep your own plan, and every family on average $2,500 less, and we're not going to have death panels. Is that true?
No, it's not true. And I live Obamacare every day in the examining room, Sean. And you know what I see? We promised Americans better health care. We got them more expensive insurance. We promised them more doctors and nurses. Instead, we got more IRS agents. This entire law is about expanded insurance, too expensive. We can't afford it. Our patients can't afford it. And the ones that told me, the ones that were on the fringe, that said to me, I can't wait till this law comes because I'm going to have coverage, be able to see you. Now they're ending up with part-time jobs. They're ending up worrying about whether they're going to have insurance at all.
Right. Steve Forbes, you are one of the best money men in the country. You understand the finances of this. Will businesses really not be able to hire full-time workers? Are they cutting back on full-time workers as a result of not wanting to meet that 30-hour requirement?
If you're a small business, absolutely. Your margins are small, therefore you don't have the ability, if you have a large profit margin, to do this. And in the face of uncertainty, you hold back and see how actually this thing is going to unfold. Bigger companies, our company is suddenly facing taxes this year and next year that we didn't really know about, and now we're learning about it. So everyone is getting hit by unanticipated costs and just sheer uncertainty, and that hurts hiring.
Sally, you support this law.
I do. I mean, first of all, look, we needed to do something in this country about runaway costs of health insurance, as well as the 35 million uninsured people. President Obama put forward a plan. It was a plan that came originally from Republicans. They liked it when it was a Republican plan. And it's done things that the American people...
pushing this plan?
Oh, come on. You know, it came from the Heritage Foundation and from John McCain. Since then, it's done things that the American people like. They like that their kids can stay on the insurance longer. They like that seniors are paying less for prescriptions. They like the rebates they've gotten, that pre-existing conditions won't throw people off of insurance. It's popular, and this effort to keep repealing it again and again and again instead of doing the actual business of the people that needs to be done.
There's nobody that I know that knows this law. She's read it. You've read every page. How many times have you read this law?
I read this law, so you don't have to, Sean.
Thank you.
Betsy McCoy, author of Beating Obamacare. And I would say this, the positive reforms that Sally just mentioned are in the first 30 pages of this 2,572-page law, and virtually everyone in Congress would support making those reforms. But the next president of the United States should take a pledge that he or she will not sign any bill into law if it's over 20 pages or it contains all this gobbledygook, because it means that we don't have a democracy. And the Washington politicians keep saying they want comprehensive health reform, comprehensive immigration reform.
How much does that thing weigh, by the way?
You know what comprehensive means, Sean? It means unread. That's what it means. The framers created our entire federal government in just 18 pages.
What about
20 pages should be
enough.
enough.
Who wants to comment on the actuaries that have determined it's going to go up? You want to, in California, 164%, 88% in Ohio.
Well, the actuary, Sean, is a big deal because when you look at how the law was calculated, and that's why you need to put the brakes on, the unintended economic consequences of Obamacare are a disaster. What employers are doing to switch to part-time, what insurance companies are doing to raise premiums and game the system, what doctors are doing to reject Medicare, and what ACOs have now failed in the experiment, all of the assumptions on which the law was passed, saying that it's actually going to save money, are completely flawed. So the CBO needs to go back and recalculate that because the economics are wrong math.
Well, the original estimate was $900 billion. Remember, the president tried. The latest CBO number that I saw was $2.8 trillion. The number's going higher. Is that a broken promise?
Well, here's the thing. We really need to go back to this point about the actuaries, because the law is called the Affordable Care Act, but it drives up the cost of insurance by a dramatic amount. In states like California, in Texas, and Florida, in nearly every state in the union, the cost of individually purchased insurance is going to go up by 40, 50, 100, 150%, depending on the state.
160 in California, right, Betsy?
That's right. And why is it going up? Because these premiums are going to include $100 billion in taxes. When you write that check for your premium, a lot of it's not for your health care. It's for new tax hikes.
Yeah, all right. Go ahead, Monica. Go ahead. I'll get to you, Dr. Siegel.
Let's take a step back and remember what this is really about. Let's take a look at the big picture. Obama in 2008 spoke about the fundamental transformation of the nation. Healthcare was his greatest lever in order to affect that. That's why he did it immediately. Obamacare was never about healthcare, health insurance, or health reform. It was only and solely, and still is, about government power and control. When you look at the history of authoritarian regimes, one of the first things they do when they seize power is seize control of the healthcare system for one simple reason. If the government controls your healthcare, the government controls you, period.
We're going to get into this more deeply. I'm going to bring up the case of that 10-year-old girl, Sarah Murnahan, in just a minute. Tim.
Yeah, back on the issue of cost for a minute. The Obama administration admits that this thing is going to be funded on the backs of young Americans, folks under 35 years old, men and women. That's their only chance to fund this new Obamacare bureaucracy. They've even said that, and we've got to call them on it.
Yeah.
The cost of that, by the way.
Go ahead.
Talk about the cost of that. In California, a study just came out that 25, 26-year-olds are going to be paying an increase of 80 to 100% in their premiums, and that's to cover older people. But will older people get better access? Another myth about this law was that if you got sick, you would go to the emergency room and you would get covered. But guess what? Our emergency rooms are overcrowded. We have 10% less emergency rooms.
Why are you shaking your head at Dr. Siegel?
By the way, I want to say one more point to Sally. The author of this bill was actually Max Baucus. This was called the Baucus bill.
The train wreck?
And he's now calling it a train wreck.
Look, first of all, let's address a lot of the things that are in here. Let's address a lot of the things that are in here. The premiums, the CBO has lowered, it's been considered an independent analysis of premiums, and premiums are going down. And a lot of the numbers you're quoting are from Republican states that are trying to make a case against Obamacare.
California's not a Republican
state. I'm sorry, but that's been found the case. Look,
there were only 4 states that had lower rates, am I right? 4?
And in New York, for instance, they're going down dramatically. But whatever.
What about the others?
Wait. Point number two. You know, Monica's point would be really interesting if, for instance, the president had pushed for an actual single-payer health insurance program by which the government took over health insurance. In this case, the government has helped the marketplace work better by allowing more companies to come into places like New York where they've been previously excluded and compete.
Can I ask you a question?
This is private insurance, and if you don't like this idea, I'd like to hear another solution.
Let me
I'd like to hear another solution.
I know everyone wants to. Let me ask you a question.
Companies coming to New York.
Government. What would you grade the government on Social Security and our lockbox?
I mean,
what would you grade them?
I don't know, but 67% of Americans don't want to get rid of Social Security. And when it was passed, the same people said it was socialism then too,
Didn't the same people say they were going to put that money aside, spend it, squander it, If they were in the private sector, they'd be in jail, handcuffed, perp walked?
If you want to have a conversation about the solvency of Social Security, that's fine. But the larger issue here is, look, most of the Affordable Care
Why do you trust the government when they have failed? We have $17 trillion in debt, 50 million Americans on food stamps, and Social Security and Medicare are going bankrupt.
Why do you, on the subway, you drove here on a highway, we have electricity, we have this cable station because America protects our airwaves.
In spite of the
government does good things too. Excuse me,
if
no.
Obama had his way, I would not be standing here today.
And you know what? Medicare, Social Security, all of these things, when they were passed, Republicans said, oh, that's socialism. That's a creepy
Monica
socialism.
wants to respond. Go ahead.
To address your point about single payer, Barack Obama has been on the record over many years saying that the ultimate objective is single payer. And in fact, when this was going through and a lot of left-leaning Democrats were very up in arms that we didn't have single payer, Barack Obama picked up the phone and told them that they were ultimately going to get there. Senator Tom Harkin said this is just a starter home, not to where you were going to get there. And all of the issues that were raised here, this is a way to accelerate the process to get us to full socialized medicine.
Guys, stay right there. I promise we have a lot of time. We're going to get this in the full hour. We have a lot to talk about. And coming up next, we're going to take you to the front lines on the battle to defund Obamacare. We're going to check in with Senator John Barrasso and Congressman Michael Burgess, both of whom happen to be physicians. They'll tell us how they plan to stop this law from being fully implemented. And later, we check back in with this rowdy group of studio audience. But first tonight, we're going to be shining the spotlight on Obamacare by the numbers. Stay with us.
Mr. Lazarus, I know you love the Affordable Care Act, but isn't it our right not to fund that which we believe should not be funded?
Well, I think it's quite clear that Congress has the power.
The right to responsibility. I was asking, and I know I need to yield back, but the power is a different question. The right and responsibility under the Constitution, wouldn't you say that is clearly within the four squares of our Constitution?
Well, I think particularly the word responsibility is putting a spin on it that I don't think is necessary, and I wouldn't necessarily want to add to, but certainly you have the power.
And that was legal expert and Obamacare supporter Simon Lazarus testifying on Capitol Hill this week, and even he was forced to admit that Congress has the legal authority to cut off funding for this train wreck that is headed our way. Joining us now to talk about that and much more, and what the legislative branch can do to prevent this law from being fully implemented, two medical doctors in their own right, Wyoming Senator John Barrasso and Texas Congressman Michael Burgess. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having us.
All right, Senator, what about the effort? Let's talk about Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Marco Rubio, and yourself. You believe it's constitutional that you can defund this?
Well, I think it's important that we defund this. I don't think that goes far enough, but I co-sponsored Ted Cruz's bill to defund the health care law. But remember, Sean, there are 20 taxes that are increased as part of this law, and 16 of them are already being collected. So we have to rip this thing out by the roots, and that goes with not just defunding it, but also repealing all of the other parts of the law as well.
Congressman, your thoughts?
Well, Sean, in your lead-in, the people talked about the 40 repeal and defunding bills that Congress has taken on. Actually, 7 of those have passed and been signed into law by the president. So it actually, bit by bit, we have been eroding this. We're coming up to a pivot point on the 30th of September. The funding for the federal government runs out, has to be re-upped. The next day, the open enrollment period occurs in the exchanges. I would submit to you this is not going to be working by October 1st. And, oh, by the way, on September 15th or thereabouts, people in my state of Texas will begin to see what their actual rates are to purchase the health care in those exchanges. And there's going to be some sticker shock.
Let me ask you, Senator, about the president. He unilaterally decided, even though it's a law of the land, that he was going to unilaterally decide that he was going to delay the employer mandate, not the individual mandate. Doesn't he have to go through Congress? Don't we have a system of checks and balances and co-equal branches of government? Doesn't he have to go to Congress for that?
Yeah, I believe he absolutely does. I would like to delay and actually repeal all of those mandates, specifically the individual mandate that says everybody in the country has to buy government-approved insurance. What people wanted in health care reform and what I want as a doctor is affordable care and access to care, and people get neither under this health care law, which is why unions are bailing on this. They've come out against the president. So many Democrats have spoken out against it. You've had Democrats in the House voting to extend this delay of the employer mandate by another year, as well as the individual mandate. This is unraveling, and it's not just Republicans. It's independents, it's Democrats, it's unions. Sean, even the state of Massachusetts, the Democrats there have put in for a waiver so they don't have to live under the health care law. And the other reason to defund this is the city of Detroit, which is bankrupt. They want to fund some of their bailout by dumping people onto Obamacare and the funding stream.
Congressman, there are some of your colleagues that seem timid. They think maybe this is the wrong strategy. I had a debate earlier this week with Karl Rove, and he thinks it's the worst law that was passed in our time. I agree with him. And he said it was sold and predicated on a whole bunch of lies told to the American people. But he thinks strategically it should be done differently, not through the effort of defunding. I know every conservative I know wants Republicans to defund it. So where are your colleagues on this?
Well, it may literally be the only tool in the toolbox to try to keep the train wreck from happening. And, you know, look, you see the train wreck coming down the track. Aren't you going to try to do something to keep that from occurring? The law was never popular. It's never enjoyed a popular support. It's going to get worse when people understand. Right now, you go to healthcare.gov in my state and click on a few boxes to try to see what it's going to cost you in the open enrollment period, and you come to a page and says this page is empty. September 15th, when people go to that page and see how much the premium has increased. A young man, age 30, non-smoker right now, that premium average in the state of Texas last January was $360. I guarantee you it's going up. And it will be worse in September of 2014, leading into the 2014 elections. The Democrats will be clamoring for this thing to be defunded and repealed by then.
You know, back, Senator, to the last question here. The president's delay of the employer mandate, it's going to cost us $12 billion. Now, maybe in a world of trillion-dollar deficits, that doesn't sound like a lot of money. That's a lot of money where I come from.
Well, and that's because all of those businesses that the incentives were to dump employees onto the exchange and just pay the fine, those fines aren't going to be collected. But I will predict to you tonight, Sean, that just as we had the 4th of July surprise with this delay of the employer mandate, I will predict to you there are going to be additional surprises coming out, because this administration can see clearly that this law is unraveling in front of their eyes.
All right, guys, thank you very much for being with us. Appreciate your insight.
Thanks for having me.
And coming up next on this special edition of Hannity, straight ahead.
Our cost-cutting measures mirror most of the proposals in the current Senate bill, which reduces most people's premiums and brings down our deficit by up to $1 trillion over the next decade, because we're spending our health care dollars more wisely.
All right, we put together a lengthy highlight reel of Obamacare's broken promises. I'll ask our studio audience to respond to this embarrassing tape as we continue this special edition of Hannity.
Nothing in this plan will require you or your employer to change the coverage of the doctor you have. That's why my proposal builds on the current system, where most Americans get their health insurance from their employer. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan. We will start by reducing premiums by as much as $2,500 per family.
That's why I met with representatives of insurance and drug companies, doctors and hospitals, and labor unions who are pledging to do their part to reduce health care costs.
Our cost-cutting measures mirror most of the proposals in the current Senate bill, which reduces most people's premiums and brings down our deficit by up to $1 trillion over the next decade, because we're spending our health care dollars more wisely.
Now, unfortunately, this is only a 1-hour special. Otherwise, that highlight reel of broken promises could have gone on all night long. Joining me now to debate the truth about Obamacare, we go back to our studio audience. Well, let's see. One of the things we've learned is that 30 million Americans still will remain uninsured. People aren't going to be able to keep their plan, and that $2,500 savings, most people in 46 states aren't going to see that.
Well, yeah, let's understand, our system before the Affordable Care Act was far from perfect. We had 2 decades of double-digit health inflation. we had 2 decades of health care costs exceeding real wage increases. So clearly something needed to be done. And there's some very good parts of this bill that move us from a fee-for-service system into something other, population-based, that rewards quality over quantity. We have to change the system, and while we might not like some parts of the bill, we ought to be able to maintain those that we do.
Phil?
Well, look, Sean, the bottom line is this bill is not ready, okay? That's why they delayed the employer mandate. That's why they delayed the employer reporting requirements. They've already scrapped things like the Class Act, big elements of this bill. But the heart of it are the exchanges. They're not ready to go. They want to force people to buy insurance from a system that is going to be a complete and utter mess. There are 12% of Americans who think keeping the employer mandate intact for next year is the right thing to do. The overwhelming majority either want it repealed or they want it delayed for 1 year. This is a president who got elected saying we hate the 1%. I'm for the regular guy. I'm for fairness. What could be more fundamental fairness than to give the same relief, the same 1 year delay to small businesses and individuals that Obama gave to the giant 1% corporations?
Isn't the bigger question, how many here would support Congress and the Senate, Mike Lee's effort to defund? Hands up. How many are? Steve Forbes, I don't see your hand up. You're surprising me.
I believe they should try the defunding, but I don't think they should go to the wall on it, because I think Obama wants to have a government shutdown in his campaign to rule by decree and discredit Congress. So I hope they get their tactics right.
Let me point out that the president does not have the constitutional authority to pick and choose which parts of a law he enforces. And the law says the mandate begins January 1st. So Congress actually has a constitutional duty to defund. The Constitution says it. It's part of checks and balances. And in Federalist 58, James Madison said, when the president overreaches and tries to grab more power than the Constitution allows, it is the duty of Congress to defund, to withhold the power of the purse.
Let me go to Keisha, and I'm going to get back to Mr. Forbes.
Yes. As a small business owner, I was really excited to hear about Obamacare, but I will admit that one of the biggest problems is no one understands it. I speak to everyday people, and they don't understand, okay, how much will the premiums be? What am I getting out of this law? And just looking at that binder over there, it's clear it's too much, but I think the intent is good.
Dr.
I agree. I thought I was here for politicians behaving badly, but when I found out why I was here, I started asking around. Do you understand?
We did Anthony Weiner last week.
Right. Okay. So I'm catching up. Nobody really understands it, and I think people are. But people are not in. People not in this room.
But we do understand it's going to cost more.
Yes.
We do understand there's still going to be 30 million uninsured.
And the people that are even a little bit knowledgeable understand that it's going to cost us a lot of money that we don't have to spend.
Let me go back to Steve Forbes. Steve, what I'm surprised about with you is if Republicans don't fight on this, and there are political considerations, what do they stand for?
No, it's not fighting. It's how you fight.
Okay.
In a way that you set the foundation to win this thing in 2014 and remove its legitimacy. The House finally is going to do some things right. They voted on the employer mandate. They voted on the individual mandate. Now they're going to go after the IRS, pass these bills, send them to the Senate, have the Senate reject them and say, here's what they want, here's what we have. Do it right. There's also a very interesting lawsuit coming out of Oklahoma. The bill says the Congress, the government cannot give subsidies to people on exchanges unless the state puts the exchange in it, unless the state puts the exchange in itself. So 34 states haven't done that. That in effect defunds the whole thing. Support that Oklahoma lawsuit.
That's a choke point I've been involved in.
Let's hear. Go ahead. Yeah.
And also in the D.C. Federal District Court case.
Yeah.
If you can topple that and take away the manna from heaven are the tax credit premium assistance payments. If Obamacare doesn't have that, it can throw everything else over the side. It can throw away mandates. It can throw away all the rules. But if it can't deliver the bucks to people, that's where it dries up. That's a choke point in an end game. Yeah. The problem with defunding is don't take a hostage if you're not ready to shoot it.
Grace Marie, go ahead.
Well, this law is just not ready for prime time. You've got one of the things they most wanted to do is to get young people enrolled in the exchanges. That's why the president's talking about getting the NBA and the National Football the football players.
$700 million we're going to spend on advertising?
To tell us how much we should love Obamacare. But people are going to find out what this law means. But that's what's happening with small businesses. They're having to put people on part-time to avoid the fines. But individuals, especially healthy young people, when they see the size of the premium that they're going to have to pay for health insurance, and they're going to say $3,000, $95 for a fine.
I'll take the
Give
fine.
me a break.
Well,
and so you're going
first of all, these young people are home anyway because they don't have jobs.
They don't have jobs. That's exactly
And their moms
right.
and dads would love to get them out of the house.
But these are the very people you need
yes,
in these
sir.
exchanges.
As a flexible staffing industry person, the temporary help industry is growing, of course, quite rapidly because of the uncertainty that's out there. Businesses are not going to hire people on a permanent basis.
This is good for your business.
Pardon?
This is good for your business.
It's good for our business, but not good for America. And that's the important thing. Are we more interested in our business or America? I'm more interested in America than I am in our own business. But 94% of all the companies over 50 employees had health insurance. So there's only 6% of them that was going to affect anyway. We have health insurance with our company for every temporary associate. If they want to take it, they can take it.
Manpower once when I was in my early 20s. I needed a job for a short period. They gave me a sickle and they said, see that hill with all that grass? Go cut it. I was like, oh, well, I needed health insurance after that.
We have 80,000 employees a day.
That's amazing. All right, we got to take a break. I promise we'll get to everybody. And coming up next, the campaign to derail Obamacare is now taking over the airwaves. We're going to play for you the very latest television ad to target the controversial law. We'll get reaction from our studio audience. We always want to hear from you. Log on to our special companion site, HannityLive.foxnews.com. Follow the show, share your thoughts on Obamacare, or you can join us on Twitter at Sean Hannity.
I've treated sick kids for 15 years. Obamacare has me worried. I've always put my patients first, taking time to really listen and get to know them. Now I wonder, can I still work with parents to decide what's best for their kids? Or will the government be in the middle of things? Will my time be spent navigating a complicated system or helping people get well? What will happen to my patients if I have to close my practice? I think there are still a lot of questions.
Now, that is a brand new television ad from the conservative group Americans for Prosperity. The president of that group, Tim Phillips, is right here in our studio audience.
Sean, we want to make sure that as folks decide whether or not to sign up for this terrible law, they have all the information. And so we want to make sure they understand their costs are going to go up, and we've got to go out to where they are. So this is just part of an effort. We're going to have thousands of volunteers in communities, neighborhoods, talking to these younger Americans who are the target of Obamacare. They're being counted on to fund it. We've got to make sure they understand exactly what they're signing up for, so hopefully they won't sign up for it. That's another good way to defund this law.
You know, they also did this, they used the back door. Remember, Scott Brown was supposed to be the 41st vote against Obamacare. They used the reconciliation process. It was corrupt from the beginning, and we lost out. Yes, sorry.
Greg Hollis, let me help you.
Yes. Help me out.
So I'm a business owner, and I've been hearing all this
What kind
talk
of business?
about,
You want to plug it?
Yeah, I do. We're government contractors. We provide security services throughout the United States. And I hear, that there's uncertainty, and maybe there is, because as a business owner, I'm required to provide an insurance carrier. So I'm not responsible for paying it, actually, for the employer, the employee. So there's no way a small business who understands what they're doing is going to sensibly say, well, I'm just going to cut back from 52 employees down to 48.
I can tell you companies that are, because you keep reading stories about McDonald's, Burger King,
to my point, Sean,
White Castle.
No informed business person is going to do that. No informed business person is going to make that decision.
Well, wait a minute.
That's
wrong. That's wrong.
I said informed. Wait a minute. This is the same lady that talked about uncertainty. I'm talking about people who are certain. I'm talking about people who understand what they're talking about. I have insurance carriers.
Go ahead.
Knocking on my door, trying to explain to me and explain to my HR department exactly what's going on, exactly where we are with Obamacare.
What about all these companies that are speaking out saying that they can't afford the insurance, and as a result, we read one article after another. If you read the Wall Street Journal, if you read the New York Times, even big late, forget me, Jimmy Hoffa Jr. in his letter to the president.
Yeah.
Is he wrong?
I'm not familiar with the letter. He may be wrong, but at the heart of this, at the crux of this political football that we're doing is we want to, as an advanced society, be able to have people to have affordable insurance.
But the problem is the CBO says 30 million Americans with this plan will still be uninsured. Wasn't that one of the big promises of
right? And that was the negotiation down from the single payer system.
I have a solution, and it would be personal savings accounts. That's what I believe.
I'd love.
Personal responsibility would be really important here, and extending entitlements, very comprehensive insurance. And I don't actually agree that Americans are confused. I think after 2 years of this debate, or 3 years now, in doctors' offices all across the country, physicians are overwhelmed. They're almost to a doctor not happy with this law, and patients are aware of it. Well, we're the engines driving this, and if you can't get in to see us, or we're ordering very expensive tests that are variable prices, there's no way that we can afford it. There's no way we can keep practicing medicine the way we want to.
The American College of Physicians, the American
Ryan, go ahead.
Ryan, I'm a business owner. I've got 120 employees. I pay for 100% of my employees and their families' insurance premiums.
What kind of business?
Book publisher. I got an author here. Stan's one of my authors.
Is that right?
You brought your book, right? All right. I've got 120 employees, about 300 on the total plan. I'm a mid-year renewal. It comes up in September. Blue Cross Blue Shield has increased our premiums 31.7%, Sean.
What are you going to do?
I'm looking for options. We're looking in Oklahoma.
Well, they'll have a more inferior plan, right? They won't be able to offer as many benefits.
Out of pocket. We'll have to increase deductibles. At the end of the day, they're going to be in worse shape. And I don't like
beauty, Sean. There'll be competition that comes in. That's not because of Obamacare. That's the beauty.
Okay, right here. Yeah.
All you have to look at is the White House is in panic mode right now. I mean, they know that public opinion on this is shattered. Even in the president's own home state, in Illinois, in Democrat congressional districts there, this thing is unpopular. People want it repealed. And just the other day, just this week, Barack Obama went down to Capitol Hill for a birthday party with Nancy Pelosi. They had cake together. And you know what he said there?
He said, good for your heart, good for your health.
He said his biggest goal is to get Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House again to protect Obamacare. He knows this thing is crumbling, and that's why this next election is critical, because if she's back there,
I actually want to see the Republicans fight, and I think strategic. I want to see them defund it. I want them to engage the American people, fight back against the propaganda. Okay. I tell you what, we'll take a break. One thing I want to talk about when we get back is the issue of death panels. And the case of, and the case of 10-year-old Sarah Murnahan. We're going to take a break. We'll come back, coming up much more with our studio audience. First, it is another look at Obamacare by the numbers tonight on Hannity.
Authorities simply declined to implement a provision of the law required.
No, I mean the executive branch is required to faithfully administer the laws that are passed by Congress, provided those laws are constitutional, and that is true of this administration and prior administrations.
Now, that was a law professor testifying before the House Oversight Committee earlier this week, and as the expert witness made very clear, the president does not have the authority to delay the implementation of the employer mandate or any other provision of Obamacare. And we continue now with our studio audience. And all right, let me get to the question. Sally hates the word death panel, so I'll focus on that.
I just hate untruths in general, but continue.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
But there's a case of a 10-year-old Sarah Murnahan. Sarah Murnahan was on the pediatric transplant list for 18 months. She has cystic fibrosis. Her doctor said that an adult transplant would work, and Kathleen Sebelius would not grant her the waiver. If it were not for a judge, that girl probably wouldn't be alive today.
That's right. And Section 1311 of this law empowers the Secretary of Health and Human Services to dictate how doctors treat even privately insured patients. Even if you've bought the health plan with your own money, no government subsidy, the government is still going to be calling some of the shots. And like you just pointed out, some doctors are going to be trapped between doing what's right for a patient and avoiding a government penalty.
Right. Greg, Daniel, go ahead. You guys jump in.
Sean, you know, this law is really about sacrifices, and someone is going to have to make a sacrifice. There is no way that we can cover everyone. I'm a physician and a small business owner, and I can tell you that I meet people every day who don't have insurance coverage, and these people are not worried about their premiums. They're worried about having insurance overall. If we don't cover everyone or most of the people, these people are going to come to the ER, and the costs are going to be 10 times as high anyway. So we have to make the sacrifice. And
some shared sacrifice. I feel like you know, we're in the Soviet Union. But here's the problem. You know, Europe came up with this great idea. I'll go use Great Britain as an example. They have a government rationing body. They have their national health services. And for example, let's say a woman comes in, needs a hip transplant or older age. She's beyond her life expectancy. Does she get that hip transplant? No, she does not. Yes, no, she does not. She get that knee replacement? No, she does not. And hang on, Tim.
She only gets it if she has a buddy in Congress or a friend in the government bureaucracy. Then you get it. Americans know that cronyism is rampant in every aspect of government, and that's why they don't trust Obamacare in this area. They know that the guys with connections will get the treatments. The average guy won't.
What did you hear about this case? He was the head of one of the provinces in Canada, and he needed to heart work, and he went to Miami.
Right. I've got a lot of friends in Canada, and it takes them 6 months to even get into the doctor, not alone get care. And they really don't like the plan that they have, but they don't have any choice.
That coverage, this is what the president made the mistake of, that by providing coverage for every individual, that it automatically translates into getting health care, and it doesn't. They're not synonymous. And so the public perception is, by getting basic insurance, why was the employer mandate deferred? Because the employer, the small business, could provide the least amount of benefit. And if the consumer opts not to take that and go to the exchange, guess what? They're going to pay more. And they can't afford to pay more, which is why this loophole is what caused this stir to say, wait a minute, this doesn't work.
Sam.
Yeah, I just want to say something else. I mean, we have small business owners on the panel, and we work with my company with a ton of small businesses. And the biggest challenge...
What company are you in?
We do sports training. So we work with a number of sports, ticket sales, sales training and development. And the biggest challenge...
You're a rich Republican.
I try. But I want to say one thing. The biggest challenge with small business owners right now, and what's happening with everything that's in Washington in the news cycle, is owners are taking their minds off generating revenue. And that's one thing I don't think it gets missed, that small business owners, this thing is going to be multiplied by owners taking their eyes off the ball with focusing on their business and things that generate revenue every day.
Yeah, a couple of points. First of all, you know, when President Obama, way back at the beginning, was talking about his mother and the care she supposedly would have gotten for ovarian uterine cancer, a lot of that was mistakenly presented. He used that as a motivation tool. Now we come forward to the Independent Payment Advisory Board. It turns out it's going to be filled with bureaucrats, non-practicing physicians. Even a shrill voice of Dr. Howard Dean is coming out saying that IPAB is going to be a big problem. That's the rationing we're facing. Now, you can call that a death panel, or you can call that a rationing panel, but private insurance follows Medicare, and this is what we're facing.
And just let's be clear that...
Wait, hang on one second.
We deal with about 50,000 medium and small companies, and they're going to go to two things: 29-hour work week, or get them under 49 hours and put them on a temporary payroll.
Wow. Let's be clear that over half this law is paid for with cuts to Medicare. That is not a shared sacrifice. And Section 3000,
$700 billion.
Right. Section 3000A of this law actually awards bonus points to the hospitals that spend the least per senior, not spend the least per patient.
We're going to get our operations and say,
per senior.
Oh, your bypass was very successful, Mr. Hannity. Go home.
Don't we spend too much on Medicare today?
No, what is the solution?
No, way too much on Medicare.
What is the ultimate solution for the problem of so many Americans not having health insurance?
I think the answer is we stop this because it won't work. I prefer medical savings accounts with catastrophic care, and that's, you build the money up over a lifetime.
Well, someone needs to educate the public on that.
The problem with that is, if people don't have preventative care, that is going to increase the chance they're going to have chronic illnesses.
Patient accounts incentivize preventative care.
I don't want the government telling me how to...
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, yeah.
government deciding what kind of health care I have. I want options.
Yes,
I want
Steve?
options.
The bottom line, Sean, take up Sally's challenge of what's the alternative, what we really haven't had for decades, and that is real free markets in health care, like we have in food, turning scarcity into abundance, and that means to have real free markets and real safety nets like we have with food.
Crossing state lines.
And Sean, if we had good health care, we wouldn't have to force people to buy it. You wouldn't need a mandate if it's worthwhile for people.
Yeah. All right, I'll tell you what, we'll take a break. We'll come back, our final segment as we continue on this special edition of Hannity. We're glad you're with us. And welcome back to Hannity and our special studio audience. Monica Crowley, yes.
We're dealing with socialized medicine. It has nothing whatsoever to do with your health care. It's about government control over your life. And I'll give you the perfect example. The IRS commissioner this week said that he prefers not to have Obamacare. He prefers the plan he has. Remember that the IRS, which is up to its eyeballs in abuse of power by targeting conservatives, this is going to be the same bureaucracy that's going to be enforcing your health care. They don't care if you're healthy. They don't care if you have health insurance. It's all about additional revenue coming into the federal government.
Good point. And here in the front, we were talking about patient savings accounts, individual accounts, free markets, go in line, I think, with what Mr. Forbes was saying.
You keep it simple. You allow people to spend money where they think it needs to go. This is all about telling people what's good for them and directing them to do it, as opposed to opening up. We can subsidize some people, but we then have a market to actually supply it. But we're way too pessimistic about this. Look at all the pieces of Obamacare that are falling off. There are at least a dozen major provisions that have either been delayed, deleted, or disguised, and there's a disharmonic convergence of everyone where they find one reason or another to be opposed to this. If we can stay at this long enough, all the wheels will come off.
And the destruction that it's doing, not just to our health sector, with doctors leaving the practice in droves, but also to what's happening to the economy. Small business owners have told me that just paying the fine for not purchasing Obamacare insurance is bigger than their profit margin. We might as well close our doors. Then everybody loses their job.
When did we ever get to a point where the government creates a disincentive for people to hire full-time workers at a time when America needs them more than ever? Yeah, right up here. Go ahead.
One thing I want to mention is that, you know, with this Lee Cruz bill, this idea of shutting down the government to defund Obamacare, it's not the right strategy. The right strategy is to delay the subsidies for a year. As Grace Marie said, the law isn't ready for prime time. The exchanges aren't going to be...
I got to interrupt you, though, quickly, and I'm going to give you your time.
Sure.
That is not what Senator Lee's saying. Senator Lee's saying fund the entire government, defund Obamacare.
Right.
That's not shutting down the government.
Well,
that would be the president's choice.
But the Senate is not going to pass that. The president's not going to sign it, and the result will be a shutdown of the government that will be profoundly unpopular and set back Republicans. But if you delay the subsidies for a year, then the real cost of Obamacare will come out because the premiums will go up, people won't be insulated from the subsidies, and there's going to be a lot of fraud because what the IRS has done, what HHS has done, is we're not going to verify your income, we're not going to verify your eligibility.
If this takes hold, name me a big government program that has ever been given and taken away.
And that's why the subsidies, that's why you got to delay the subsidies.
How many times can we allow this president to grab more power than the Constitution allows? Congress has the responsibility. They've taken an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. They have a responsibility to use that defunding power to stop this president from violating the law.
Every poll shows that the more Americans know about this law, the less they like it. Our job is to go out and make sure that at the grassroots